The book Brainfacts is obviously about the brain. So let's learn something about the chapter 1, Brain Basics. And the brain is literally the nerve center of your body. It contains billions of neurons that transmit information from the body and the outside world, and then programs our responses, conscious and unconscious movements, thoughts, emotions, and memories. What's more, your brain can do all these things simultaneously, and you can throw a ball while talking to a friend, plan dinner while you are shopping, or daydream about the bullet rats as you drive to work. Your brain can pull off these feats of multitasking because it is split into many distinct regions, specialized for specific tasks and abilities. And first, about the major brain landmarks. First is cerebrum. The largest part of the human brain is cerebrum, and it is divided into two large separate hemispheres, one on the left side, the other on the right. The hemispheres are connected by bundles of nerve fibers that carry information from one side of your brain to the other. The largest of these boundaries from a bridge between the cerebral hemispheres is called corpus callosum, and the surface of the cerebrum is a deeply folded layer of nerve tissue called cerebral cortex. Its deep folds increase the area of the cerebral cortex, creating space in the surface layer for more neurons, which increase the brain's processing power. Just as explorers use landmarks like rivers and mountain ranges to describe and map continents, neuroscientists use the deepest divisions of the cerebrum to identify regions of each hemisphere as separate lobes, distinct regions that have characteristic functions, and this brain map will serve as a useful trail guide as you explore the brain in the chapters ahead. And then let's look something about major brain landmarks. First is frontal lobes. The frontal lobes are at the front of the brain, immediately above the eyes. Part of these lobes coordinate volunteer movements and speech, memory and emotion, higher cognitive skills like planning or problem solving, and many aspects of personality. And the and then is parietal lobes, and it's located at the top of the brain, immediately behind the frontal lobes. They integrate sensory signals from the skin, process text, and process some types of visual information. And the back of the brain houses the occipital lobes. They process visual information and are responsible for recognizing colors and shapes, and integrating them into complex visual understanding. And the temporal lobes is associated with language, memory, and emotion. And in the picture above, this picture are the brain's four principal lobes. The frontal lobe, responsible for attention, planning, and decision making, is labeled blue. The temporal lobe, associated with language, memory, and emotion, is labeled in green. And parietal lobe, which integrates information from the senses, is labeled in yellow. And the occipital lobe, responsible for vision, is labeled in pink. And forebrain. The hippocampus and amygdala are parts of the limbic system, a group of structures deep within the brain that help regulate our emotion and movement. Other parts of the limbic system include the thalamus, which integrated sensory information and relays it to other parts of the brain, and the hypothalamus, which sends hormone signals to the rest of the body through the pituitary gland. These structures, together with the cerebral cortex, make up the forebrain. And these are two pictures about the forebrain, and it shows the specific structures about the forebrain. It contains thalamus, hypothalamus, amygdala, hippocampus. And then midbrain. The midbrain sits beneath the thalamus. It includes distinct groups of neurons that coordinate eye movements like blinking and focusing, and trigger reflexes to sounds. An example is the startled jump when you are surprised by a loud noise. Other regions of the midbrain inhibit unwanted body movements and help coordinate sensory input and motor output to manage the fine motor control that enables you to write with a pen or play a musical instrument. Some of these regions, along with parts of the forebrain, from a collection of structures called basal ganglia, which helps regulate complex body movements. And these pictures shows the specific structures about the midbrain. And then headbrain. The headbrain plays roles in glucose regulation and sleep and includes several regions that help control movements. The cerebellum is underneath the occipital lobe at the very back of the brain. It's the second largest part of the brain in volume, containing over half the brain's neurons. Like the cerebrum, the cerebellum is deeply folded, divided into two hemispheres, and carries out a variety of functions. For example, it coordinates volunteer movements and helps the brain learn new motor skills. It also has roles in spatial or temporal perception. A patient with cerebral damage may have a jerky, a rhythmic gait, or might be unable to accurately touch his finger to his nose. And below the cerebellum is pons, which influences breathing and posture. Another part of the headbrain, the medulla, carries nerve pathways connecting the brain to the spinal cord and contains neural networks that help control basic functions like swallowing, heart rate, and breathing. Together, the midbrain, pons, and medulla make up the brainstem. And this is a picture about the headbrain, and we can see that the headbrain is is underneath the occipital lobe at the very back of the brain. And let's focus on excitatory and inhibitory neurons. And the majority of neurons in your brain, about 80% of them, are excitatory. It's sending signals that push their neighbors toward firing. In many parts of the cerebral cortex, the most common type of excitatory neurons is the pyramidal cell, named for its cone-shaped cell body. Each pyramidal cell has two sets of branched dendrites, one set at the apex and another set of shorter dendrites at the base. They collect signals from neurons in every layer of the cortex. A multi-branched axon sends a signal electric signal to multiple destinations. And the inhibitory neurons. The 20% of your brain's neurons that are inhibitory. They send signals that suppress the activity of neighboring neurons and regulate the activity of a circuit. And in this picture, we can see that excitatory synapses include glutamate, and inhibitory synapses include GABA. And we will talk about it later. And the glutamate is the most important neurotransmitters that it's excitatory neurons. And GABA is the most important neurotransmitters that is inhibitory neurons. And then the neurons. The functional unit of neuron circuits and networks is the neuron, a specialized cell that can transmit electrical signals to other nerve cells, muscles, or glands. Neurons come in a broad range of shapes and size, but all of them have a cell body, dendrites, and an axon. The cell body, also called the soma, contains the neuron's nucleus and most of its cytoplasm, along with molecule machinery for building and transporting proteins critical to the cell's function. Dendrites are branched projections that extend from the cell body and collect incoming signals from other neurons. The neuron's electrical signals travel down its axon, another extension for the cell body that may branch before ending in axon terminals, where the signal is passed across a synapse to other cells. In some neurons, axons are only a fraction of a centimeter long. In others, they may extend more than a meter. And this is a picture that shows the structure of the neurons. And we can see the structure called myelin sheath. And it's a structure that can speed up the conduction of nerve signals. And the glia. Neurons are associated with support cell called glia. And the central nervous system contains four main types of glial cells. First is astrocytes, from a network inside the brain that regulates ion concentrations around neurons, provides them with nutrients, and helps regulate the formation of new connections between neurons. And second, microglia are the brain immune cells of the brain. They function mainly as phagocytes, helping protect the brain from infections and cellular damage, but can also regulate the formation of new neuron connections. And third, its ependymal cells make the cerebral spinal fluid that cushions the brain inside the skull. And the last is oligodendrocyte, improve neural function by wrapping axons in a fatty sheath called myelin. And this picture shows the structure about the four types of glia. And ion channels. Ions are electrically charged items that can only cross a neuron cell membrane through a tunnel like proteins called ion channels. These tunnel-like proteins act like gates, allowing some ions to enter or leave the cell, but keeping others out. Ions that enter or leave the cell change the voltage differences across the membrane. This change in voltage influences the neuron's likelihood of generating an electrical signal. And in mammals, the voltage difference across the membrane of a resting neuron is around -70 millivolts, more negative inside the cell than on its outer surface. That membrane potential is affected by signals arriving from other neurons in its circuit, which can make the membrane potential less negative. And it's also called depolarized or more negative. Hyperpolarized. By opening ion channels at the dendrites. If the sum of all the signals at the dendrites raises too much the membrane's threshold voltage, a series of voltage-sensitive ion channels opens automatically, triggering an electrical impulse called an action potential, which moves down the axon towards the next neurons in the circuit. And synapses. And its definition is very simple. It just signals are passed from one neuron to the next at junctions called synapses. And in most circuits, a synapse includes the end of an axon, the dendrite of an adjacent neuron, and a space between the two called synaptic cleft. The cleft is wide enough that electrical signals can't directly impact the next neurons. Rather, chemical signals called neurotransmitters across the synapse. This process is called neuron transmission. And the brain's most common excitatory neurotransmitter is glutamate, and the brain's most common inhibitory neurotransmitter is GABA. And that's all there's to in the first chapter. And thank you for listening.